It's an interesting question how much you can make that distinction. But also, at least at some level of training, you should not only be learning facts, but you should be learning how to think and
does that make you more? Does that mean you're
skills.
more intelligent?
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
that may not be the whole story. Yeah.
I mean, just because you're a better thinker, does that mean you're more intelligent?
If not, what would intelligence mean?
Something more innate.
A real genetic person.
I was just going to say, doesn't that come after the crystallized versus fluid intelligence? Like, education is like learning actual thinking.
Well, I mean, it does, but I mean, one component of education presumably is the acquisition of more and more crystallized intelligence. But at least in some kinds of education, it should also be enhancing your fluid intelligence. Right? I mean, actually, in some ways, I'd like to use it. You know, Baltus uses language that is pretty much congruent with crystallized and fluid. He talks about the content of intelligence and the mechanics of intelligence. And it's a little tricky to just put it as they totally correspond, but in some ways, like the fluid is like the mechanics. It's like you know, you should be learning across the course of all your years of education not only stuff, but you learn how to learn, and you learn how to solve problems, and you learn different techniques for manipulating knowledge and discovering new knowledge and new knowledge. Theoretically. You had your head.
Oh, I was just going to say that education and intelligence, though, are also really confounded with prenatal nutrition because of higher parental education and like all of those things. So I think that it's not necessarily like education, but it's also access to a whole lot of other resources that, you know, and nutrition and those types of things that I have a hard time with.
Sometimes there are a lot of people who come from nothing and whose mothers came from nothing, and somehow they break through all these ceilings. So I don't necessarily go with that.
Yeah, except they always have worse health when they compare a poor child and a rich child, and they both go to Harvard and have the same income. The poor child has worse health than the rich child did. So, I mean...
They're smart, but they have bad health.
What?
They're smart, but they have bad health.
Well, I mean, right. I mean, it's just that I think there's a lot of evidence to show that things pass down through multiple generations.
Intelligence is about 50% heritable, which is about as high as you get in the
My brother has, correct or incorrect, his IQ's been put at 185. And there are definitely times that we ask if it's 185 or 18.5. But but aside from that, we were privately adopted, so we definitely know something about our parents. And his father was some sort of like young prodigy violinist. And my brother that's primarily in language and in music is where his gift lies. He also has some pretty much photographic memory and ear. What would be photographic ear? What would be the auditory? Anyways, but he hears something once and he can pretty much put it out, and he plays multiple instruments, of which he only ever took piano lessons. But he doesn't just regurgitate. It's not just the knowledge he's taken in. He's able to take all this information and string it along a particular type of thread, and he's also able to change the paradigm. And I think that's where his intelligence comes in. It's not just being able to memorize or to see something or hear something and be able to spit it out again. It's that he's able to take it and he's able to manipulate it and to make these connections that no one else can make. And it's kind of creepy. He's kind of creepy. No, he's not. He's a nice guy.
Well, it's always, we were talking last week about the extent to which you recognize and believe in individual differences in intelligence. And, you know, and it is, especially if it doesn't happen to you a whole lot, it is interesting to run into people who are clearly a lot brighter than you.
You wouldn't know it.
See the world really differently.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't know it with my brother until you actually sat down to meet and start talking.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't, I'm sorry.
Good.
I mean, to me, what I think is that if you have intelligence, it enables you to acquire knowledge and use it in a unique way. And yes, it can teach you how to think things differently, but the same two people with different, I'm positing this obviously, two people with different levels of intelligence could learn the same stuff, but not integrate it the same way into their brain. And the more intelligent person
They know how to use it.
yes.
Yeah, it's the skill and
Yes,
manipulation.
that's what I
and the
think. So I don't think
practicality.
education increases intelligence, it just increases whatever.
I
said that before.
On some level, I agree, because my brother, he went through high school, and he went to 1 year at Cal State Northridge that he never showed up to any of his classes. But he reads Nietzsche for kicks. He needs that kind of stimulation. So he's self-taught.
I definitely agree. It's kind of like putting a whole bunch of tools in a toolbox, but if you don't know how to use a hammer, then you don't know how to use a hammer.
You might
it's
just
not
hit your
worth
thumb
it.
with it.
Yeah.
That's what I would do in real life. Because I don't have spatial abilities, so I would probably hit
And this actually, they could come back at this at the end of their paper as well. But one of the interesting questions, I think, is knowing that education is highly related to preserved mental ability, would you push for universal higher education as a way of preventing dementia and preventing cognitive decline in later life? It's like what do you do with the information? Should we have everybody go to graduate school?
But you could push for higher education, not to prevent mental decline, but you could do it for more positive health outcomes. Because
That's a positive outcome.
I was thinking of physical health. I mean,
Well, a couple of weeks ago, the lunch seminar with Dana, he came in and that's exactly what he said. He said, if you have a
that is
trillion,
what he
if you have
said.
$1 trillion, you don't blow it on the health care. You blow it on, you don't blow it. You put it into education for higher education,
Yeah.
so that you prevent all of this
That would
stuff.
be more long term.
I guess I was thinking of physical health, but that's
That's what he was
That's
talking
still
about. He was talking about
related,
cholesterol. He was
Yeah.
talking about diabetes. He
Yeah.
was talking about HIV.
Even cardiovascularly, typically the more
that's
intelligent,
so when
more
you-
wealthy. are
I just
healthier.
think it makes for a healthier society, whether it prevents mental decline. I was thinking of the physical aspects. I wasn't thinking.
Can you imagine a society where everybody has a college degree?
Yeah,
It would
well-
mean nothing to have a college degree.
No,
Who's going to take out the garbage?
I know.
Every-
The guy that does would do a
The lower
very
IQ
good job
household.
at it. I can tell you that much.
Alicia, you can try to
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about the style of learning? As far because even if you're self-taught, that still is a form of education. Or some people learn better by emulating or doing something or reading something versus audit.
I don't think we've gotten anywhere close to that level of analysis. What would make a difference here? Yes.
I'm just thinking, so what your thoughts are, someone in class, like what would, like the poet laureate, like how would you judge that kind of intelligence? I mean,
They're pretty high ranking.
right, but I mean, a lot of times some of the best poets don't have any formal education, so.
Not that guy to be able to sit down and even like solve a simple algebraic equation, but
I mean, there's clearly not a perfect correlation between education and intelligence. In either direction. I mean, you can point to people who have gotten graduate degrees who are probably at best sort of going on. You can point to people who have very little education and clearly highly developed intellectual skills.
Didn't you see Goodwill Hunting?
Or look at Bill Gates, who
That's
dropped out
actually
of
written
college.
about me.
Obviously he didn't need college. I mean, to get where he is.
Those are
Well,
small.
my grandfather
That's
had
true.
about, I think about 2 or 3 years of formal education. And he had something approaching photographic memory. Worked as a cook most of his life. He never really came down and never made any mistakes. He was a very, very busy restaurant. That's what kind of played out in his life.
It's interesting.
And so this is, Salt House and the sort of,